Excited to announce Joohwan's team. It is Lilligant, Groudon, Tapu Lele, Duskmane, Necrozma, Stakataka, and I believe that is a Zoroark in the bottom corner there. Over on Steven's side, a bit more of a standard team with the Incineroar, Tapu Koko, Gengar, Kyogre, Rayquaza, and Bronzong.
Oh man, I'm so excited. I mean, there's a Necrozma, I wanted to see that. There's a Lilligant, there's a Zoroark too. Which, like, you know, we don't see too often in VGC. Honestly, I think the last time I saw it was back in 2011. But the amount of mind games you have to play around Zoroark, not knowing whether a Pokemon is actually the Pokemon or Zoroark, is like so scary, especially when you have things like Lilligant and Tapu Lele, right? Look, those are such major threats.
Yeah, yeah, I haven't seen a Zoroark in competitive VGC play since 2011. I actually fell to one in the 2011 National Championships, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
wow, okay,
yeah.
so you have some experience with that.
Yeah, actually, my opponent disguised it very well as a Jellicent, so I didn't fake it out, even though I suspected that it could be a Zoroark. So, yep, there's a lot of mind games that come along when you do bring Zoroark. If Zoroark is even brought along in this case, really just has a good matchup against that Gengar.
Gengar and Bronzong.
Yeah, and Bronzong.
So this is pretty interesting, right? Like, Necrozma is always one of those Pokemon because, like, even if you Ultra, you're still going to be slower than Mega Gengar, assuming both are max speed. So, obviously, like, you want to bring Necrozma into this matchup because it does outspeed the Rayquaza, and you can get really powerful attacks off against the Kyogre and the Rayquaza, but you are going to have to watch out for that Gengar. So I'd imagine Steven's definitely going to be bringing both Rayquaza and Kyogre. Obviously, it's a question of who does he want to support it with. Gengar, definitely a pretty solid option, just to pressure the Necrozma a little bit more.
And here we go, jumping now into the leads. Rayquaza and Tapu Koko leads, and Groudon and Lilligant leads. So, Steven leading with Rayquaza and Tapu Koko, Joohwan leading with Groudon and Lilligant. Of course, Lilligant gets that Chlorophyll ability, but it's not going to matter too much since Rayquaza is currently out locking the air, making sure that nobody gets any benefits at all from weather.
Yeah, Rayquaza definitely looking like it's in a pretty good spot right now, right? It isn't really in much threat, although Lilligant's, especially in 2017, did run Hidden Power Ice, and you do have to worry about Sleep Powder as well, but like you mentioned, because of the airlock, Lilligant will be slower, so that means Rayquaza and Tapu Koko should both be able to outspeed. And the thing about going against Rayquaza is you always have to wonder, you know, what set is it? Is it carrying something like Water Flower, Earth Power, especially on some of these Assault Vest sets, or does it not have a way to really hit Groudon other than Dragon Ascent? So, I mean, Lilligant here could opt to maybe go for a Sleep Powder into the Rayquaza, but you might just get doubled up into with like a Dragon Ascent and a Dazzling Gleam. And but Groudon, of course, can retaliate onto the Tapu Koko with the knockout, but for Steven, like, he doesn't mind losing Tapu Koko if it means a free switch into the Kyogre. Joohwan really has to be worried about, or he has to play smart around the Kyogre that is definitely going to be in the back for Steven.
Yeah, so here we go. Steven really taking his time here to try to figure out what his best course of action is, as Lilligant is going to switch out on Joohwan's side. Necrozma is going to go ahead and take the field here. That Duskmane, Steel Psychic typing, as Mega Rayquaza is going to go ahead and take the field here. No waiting at all, just going to go ahead and Mega Evolve and bring out the Delta Stream. Going to reduce the amount of super effective damage it takes for its flying type. And Tapu Koko will be the first Pokemon now to make a move as it just protects, which really shows a lot as to what set it is. Not that Assault Vest variant that we've seen earlier today, as Rayquaza now using Dragon Ascent here. It is going to go ahead and target down that Necrozma. It's not going to do much damage at all thanks to that Steel typing. So smart switch right there from Joohwan. Still does a pretty good amount of damage, honestly. Yeah. As Rayquaza lowers its defense here, as Groudon now gets to make its move, and it's going to reveal Earth Power into Tapu Koko's Protect. Yeah, so nice play from both players and there. Steven not really worried about a potential Focus Sash on that Lilligant, which is an item that I could definitely run, but wants to just target it down with the Dragon Ascent. Still gets a lot of good damage off against that Necrozma, like you mentioned. Groudon revealing that is a special variant with Earth Power against that Tapu Koko as well, so don't have to deal with accuracy. Right now, Groudon's still putting on a lot of pressure because Tapu Koko and Rayquaza shouldn't have a way to knock out this Groudon unless there is a potential Hidden Power Water, for example, on the Tapu Koko, or a Waterfall on Rayquaza, but Joohwan looks pretty comfortable in leaving the Groudon out right now. Necrozma, good Pokemon to switch in. You're probably not going to want to Ultra Burst because you don't want to take Dragon Ascents that do neutral damage. Tapu Koko here, however, of course, could have a big attack like a target down the Necrozma, but Necrozma could easily protect, so switching out here, definitely a viable option, and Kyogre definitely probably the best Pokemon for Steven to switch into. Kyogre takes the field here, going to go ahead and change the weather as it reverts primally. Going to go ahead and bring out that Primordial Sea, so it's going to be raining.
It is, and it is quite the good time to bring out a Kyogre, especially against these two Pokemon, both which will really just faint to an Origin Pulse or Water Spout.
Yeah, especially after you've seen that, this Groudon has Earth Power, probably means it lacks physical attacks.
Right.
So Kyogre has a much better special defense here, as looks like Rayquaza can tend to just go for another Dragon Ascent into that Necrozma, as Groudon, again, using Earth Power into what was that Tapu Koko slot, hitting Kyogre for its 50% with a critical hit, though. So, unfortunate for Steven that there was a critical hit. Steven probably would have preferred if Kyogre took way less damage.
Yeah, but it's still a good turn for Steven. I think Joohwan was very clearly trying to bait a potential electric type attack, maybe a Z move into the Necrozma, get the knockout in return, but instead Kyogre comes in, and now you're kind of in an awkward spot, right? Because Necrozma, of course, can Ultra Burst, increasing its speed, but then Rayquaza will be able to just get a full power Dragon Ascent off. However, with that crit, that means like Kyogre might be in KO range from a Photon Geyser, depending on how it's trained. And yeah, Kyogre right now really threatening out the Groudon, so Groudon doesn't want any business staying in.
Lilligant is going to take the field, though, replacing that Groudon. As
here we go.
Necrozma Ultra Burst here. Going to go ahead and bring out Ultra Necrozma.
Yeah, so the big question here is, did Steven protect the Kyogre? If he does Joohwan predict that and target the Rayquaza? And there's a protect.
Yeah, so Kyogre now protecting itself as Ultra Necrozma takes the field here. Gets a nice speed boost right there. As Necrozma goes for a Dragon Pulse, outspeeds the Rayquaza over on Steven's side here. Going to go ahead and hit it for big damage with that special defense drop first, but Rayquaza hangs on with a Focus Sash, revealing the set that it is.
Nice call there, though, expecting the protect, getting a lot of good damage on the Rayquaza, also revealing its item, so not too surprising to see a Focus Sash, but with so many Assault Vest variants and Choice Banded variants, yeah, you never know. And so Dragon Ascent, however, there will get the knockout in return onto the Necrozma, so still decently favorable. Of course, this does mean now
this opens up the opportunity for Groudon to come in.
Exactly, and with Rayquaza so low, and with it having a Mega Evolved already, Sun will actually be out on the field, so Lilligant can actually take full advantage of that.
Yeah, so now with Groudon, it's actually Tapu Lele instead, so no Zoroark from Joohwan's side. That's what I'm looking out for right now.
I wanted to
just
see
to make
it,
sure,
yeah.
just to make sure. I don't want to fall for the illusion. But Tapu Lele takes the field, going to go ahead and bring out that Psychic Terrain. So Tapu Lele, a very popular Pokemon in this format, not trying to take advantage of the Sun just yet with that Groudon, though you're right, it would have been a great opportunity to bring it in.
Yeah, I mean, you'd assume that this Tapu Lele is Choice Scarf, because if it's not, then you would allow Rayquaza to get another attack off. So, I mean, I think right now, if I were Steven, I would definitely assume it's Scarfed, and if it is Scarfed, then you're kind of in a predicament, because the Tapu Lele can safely target down Rayquaza, and Lilligant should be faster than Kyogre, can launch a Grass-type attack into that slot, and so, yeah, Steven, being aware of that, is going to switch out, and by resetting the terrain, it also means that he could potentially use Extreme Speed later on, which can be a really big deal because both Tapu Lele and Lilligant are not very defensive.
And of course, resetting that to prevent any Sleep Powder actions that Joohwan tries to take here on any grounded Pokemon, as Incineroar takes the field over on Steven's side, replacing that Kyogre. So smart defensive switching right here from Steven just to set it up for later on, as well as reducing any real damage that Tapu Lele could have done if it did try to target down with a Psychic-type attack. Moonblast from Tapu Lele hits in that Tapu Koko slot, does good damage right there, but Lilligant's Sleep Powder is blocked by that Electric Terrain. Yeah,
like you mentioned, the Electric Terrain really being a big deal to block those Sleep Powders. This is still kind of a tricky position for Steven, though, because Moonblast is doing so much damage to everything. He kind of needs to knock out the Tapu Lele, and he doesn't really have great options. One play you can make, however, is, of course, now with Electric Terrain being on the field, you can fake out the Tapu Lele and go for an Electric-type attack, maybe the Z move if you're carrying it. If Joohwan, of course, is Choice Scarf, he won't be able to block that. Then his only way around that is by switching the Tapu Lele out into Groudon, hoping to bait it out. So this next turn is going to be pretty big here. Steven's priority is definitely to knock out this Tapu Lele, because if it goes down, then it means that Rayquaza will be able to get a Dragon Ascent off and knock out the Lilligant without dealing with the threat of a potential Scarf Lele.
Yeah, so here we go now, coming into this turn.
No
Lilligant
switch outs.
protects here, does not want to get KO'd just yet, as it looks like Tapu Lele revealing that it is carrying that Choice Scarf, outspeeding that Tapu Koko over on Steven's side, lands into that Incineroar with a Moonblast, and here comes a Twinkle Tackle from this Tapu Koko here, just trying to land out some big damage.
Yeah, so, Tapu Koko is one of those Pokemon that has two really good Z moves, and Twinkle Tackle, of course, certainly a viable option, a little bit weaker than Thunderbolt against something like Tapu Lele, so let's see what slot this goes into. We didn't see a Fake Out. It does go into the Tapu Lele slot, but more importantly, the Moonblast targeted Incineroar, not the Lele, so that's going to take so much damage there, and a Flare Blitz is going to go into the Protect, so Tapu Lele will still stick around. As you mentioned, it is going to confirm that a Choice Scarf. But the main problem right now for Joohwan is I don't think he can knock out the Incineroar if it does have one of those berries. And you'd assume that's what the item is going to be because Tapu Koko revealed that it had the Z move.
Yeah, so probably going to have to wait for that Groudon to be able to come in to take advantage of the, sunlight with that chlorophyll. But again, Kyogre and Rayquaza are just waiting in the back, ready to change that weather. So it's going to come down to a weather war. Steven has two options to reset the weather. Joohwan only has that Groudon in the back, which is probably going to be forced out the next turn anyways.
Yeah, I mean, Tapu Lele is just in kind of an awkward spot right now because it's such an important Pokemon for Joohwan, but it also can't knock everything out. I think Steven here should probably double up into the Tapu Lele slot, knowing, okay, the Tapu Lele is probably going to target down the Tapu Koko, but if it targets down Incineroar, then great. Like, it should survive. If it crits, then Tapu Koko should still be able to get the knockout. I just think you really need to prioritize knocking out Tapu Lele because that is the biggest threat to the Rayquaza and the Kyogre, so,
yep.
Yeah.
And so Moonblast from Tapu Lele now hits into that Tapu Koko, gets the KO, but Incineroar will be able to get a KO here. Boosted by the sun now. Gonna use Flare Blitz and get... Oh! Hits the Groudon slot instead. Not very effective damage. Really just trying to target down that Lilligant. So, fair play. Just trying to knock out that Lilligant. But again, that Tapu Lele with that boosted speed, or not even the boosted speed, but just now, Joohwan has a pivot, can switch that Groudon out to reset the weather later on.
Yeah, I'm really surprised by that, to be honest. I felt like you had a pretty clear double up into the Tapu Lele there. Rayquaza now, of course, can pressure the Tapu Lele with extreme speed, but Joohwan does have a window open now to switch the Tapu Lele out. I felt that if the Incineroar just targeted down Tapu Lele and it fainted there, then Steven will have the Weather War 1. We know that there's Kyogre in the back, and then so you'll have Rayquaza and Kyogre out as long as you turn out with Incineroar against Groudon and Lilligant, and that should be a favorable matchup for Steven. So kind of surprised to see that Flare Blitz go into the Lilligant slot, and yeah, Joohwan doesn't want to lose his Lele because at this point he can just Moonblast everything, and this Groudon isn't in threat of a knockout unless there's a Waterfall from this Rayquaza.
Oh, and it looks like Kyogre is going to take the field here, so it is going to be the Heavy Rain operating right now. Unless Groudon can switch out in some way as Lilligant takes the field for that Tapu Lele. Probably going to try to take this extreme speed, which it will take very well at full health. Hasn't taken any damage yet. That does a lot of damage though, as Groudon now uses Earth Power. It lands into that Kyogre slot. Unless a critical hit occurs, it does not occur. Kyogre hangs on.
Yeah, this game just got so interesting because we also don't know who's faster between the Groudon and the Kyogre, but once the Lilligant goes down, you can bring Tapu Lele in, and then that means like you cannot extreme speed any longer. So no extreme speed means that the Rayquaza can't just priority knock out the Tapu Lele, meaning it gets a big attack off. I mean, everything on Steven's end is so low at this point, but if you're able to knock out the Tapu Lele, then Kyogre, should it be faster than Groudon, will just be able to one-shot it. So the speeds between Groudon and Kyogre are going to be quite important, but this next turn is also big. Do you protect Groudon and just hope to sack Lilligant to get the free switch into Tapu Lele? I think that's probably the most likely place. I think switching in Tapu Lele at this point, it would be a little bit too reckless. But once again, I mean, I'm really curious how the speeds match up between Kyogre and Groudon.
Yeah, and Groudon now forced to protect itself, does not want to, kind of possibly not beat the Kyogre in terms of speed, as Rayquaza now uses Dragon Ascent. Going to go ahead and land into that Lilligant slot and get the KO. So now Tapu Lele is going to be forced in. Bring out the Psychic Terrain, but again, what is Joohwan going to do here with all of that information? Probably might have to use that Tapu Lele to try to KO the Kyogre, because I feel like Kyogre definitely has a chance to pick up the KO on ground, whereas Rayquaza does not. Yeah,
I mean, this really comes down to, there are two things, right? If Groudon is faster than Kyogre, then Joohwan is a pretty easy play where you just click Moonblast onto the Rayquaza and Earth Power the Kyogre, but that's assuming that you are faster. So, however, if you are slower, then like you mentioned, you're kind of forced to target down the Kyogre. But of course, Steven could protect the Kyogre, and Rayquaza could launch Dragon Ascent into the Tapu Lele slot. So this is going to be, I would say, the game-defining turn. It comes down to who does Tapu Lele target and who does Steven protect.
If Steven even decides to protect anybody this turn.
Right, and who's faster between Groudon and Kyogre, because, if Joohwan's Groudon is faster, then he should just be able to get the knockout here. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure he'll make his decision based off how fast he knows his Groudon is, but this is definitely a really, really intense finish. I mean, yeah, this is why Tapu Lele was so important to conserve, and that's why I was surprised Steven didn't get the knockout with it onto it earlier. Being able to reset the terrain, block extreme speed is such a big deal. So right now, Joohwan has to choose his target carefully. if his Lele ends up getting a knockout, then most likely should be game. And no protects, no
Tapu
switches,
Lele
nothing.
uses Moonblast here. Tapu Lele uses Moonblast to target down the Kyogre. Gonna do damage and get the KO. Joohwan sort of reacting to that, though. Unfortunate here as the Heavy Rain gets lifted, and Rayquaza now using Dragon Ascent. It is going to go ahead and target down that Groudon. Is it going to be enough to get the KO here? It does not get the KO, so Tapu Lele actually gets to hang on as the special defenses drop, and Groudon now using Earth Power. So right there, Joohwan really doubling up into that Kyogre slot.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot going on there. Joohwan obviously looked quite disappointed because he thought the Tapu Lele was going to go down, but Incineroar's out. You can't fake out the Tapu Lele, and now he can cleanly just go for Moonblast into Rayquaza, and the Earth Power into Incineroar. Really interesting decisions on both end there. I mean, I think what Joohwan was going for was ensuring that Kyogre would get knocked out, but I mean, I think a Moonblast is finishing it off there anyway, so I guess it covers the Incineroar switching in and Rayquaza protecting. That was probably the play that Joohwan was expecting. But Dragon Ascenting Groudon there on Steven's end is pretty interesting. I think maybe he was just hoping to... I'm not sure, because now Moonblast will just be able to seal up the steal, and it felt like this was Steven's game to lose, and not knocking out Tapu Lele definitely really punished him.
Yeah, so Tapu Lele now using Moonblast into that Rayquaza, gets KO as Groudon using Earth Power into that Incineroar slot. Big damage right there and gets the KO. So Joohwan Kim takes this game 1. Steven Morioka now back to the drawing board, gonna have to try to figure out how he can force game 3.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he played it pretty well just up until the end. I feel like if Tapu Lele goes down, you have a pretty clear win condition with Kyogre and Rayquaza. I'm still thinking of the last play on why you would Dragon Ascent the Groudon, maybe not expecting Tapu Lele to be Choice Scarf, but he should have known that given that it outsped Tapu Koko. So, yeah, I'm really not sure. Maybe he was also just hoping it would knock out or get a critical hit onto the Groudon. Either way, it seemed...
I think that's regardless what Steven had to go for, because there was no other way that you know, Kyogre was going to go down.
Yeah, I guess, what he was thinking, and I can kind of understand now, is that, like, you have Incineroar in the back, and that's not going to knock out the Rayquaza, and, like,
knock out the Groudon.
Yeah, like, Joohwan is going to get a knockout there, and the Groudon in the back is going to, or sorry, Joohwan's Groudon is going to be able to deal with the Steven's Incineroar really easily. So because of that, Steven knows, okay, the only way I have to knock out this Groudon is if I get the critical hit there. But because Joohwan actually ended up going for the prediction and doubling up, Rayquaza would have actually survived the turn, and Steven would have won had he targeted Tapu Lele. But I can understand the reasoning behind targeting Groudon a little bit better. It wasn't like, because if you target down the Tapu Lele, then Groudon, should it go for a fire type attack, will also just knock out Rayquaza, and then Incineroar will lose 1v1 there. But that was a really crazy finish.
Yeah, so here we are now jumping into game 2 between Joohwan Kim and Steven Morioka. Getting ready now.
Yeah.
It's almost, yeah.
It's
intense. It's intense.
It was, yeah. I mean, there was no definitive answer for both players there, right? If you protect one and the other gets Moonblasted, then you lose the game. So I think there were a lot of mind games, obviously, at the end of that. Steven had a big opportunity to knock out, however, the Tapu Lele earlier on in the game, and he didn't, and I think that really came to bite him back. So I think going into this next game, he knows that the Tapu Lele is Choice Scarf. He wants to prioritize getting the knockout onto it, so can't let it stick around for as long as it did this last game.
Here we are now, game 2 between these two players. Necrozma and Tapu Lele leads for Joohwan. Over on Steven's side, he is going to go ahead and lead with Kyogre and Tapu Koko.
Yeah, so because the Tapu Lele is Choice Scarf, of course, the Tapu Koko will actually control the terrain, bring up the electric terrain. Tapu Lele still does a lot of damage with Moonblast, though, and the Necrozma... this is kind of interesting, right? Because we know that the Necrozma is going to be slower than the Tapu Koko even after Ultra Bursting, and Tapu Koko does have the Fairy Z move, so you might be inclined to not Ultra Burst, but if you don't Ultra Burst, then you'll stay as a Steel type, and the Kyogre will be able to just get something really strong, like Origin Pulse off, for example. So Joohwan's in this position where obviously he'd like to switch into Groudon, but Steven could also make a read and go for something like a Volt Switch, or even just hard switch out into Rayquaza. And if you can switch Rayquaza in the turn like Groudon comes in and just get a free knockout onto it, like that puts you up so much in this matchup.
Yeah, so it's going to be a tough call right here. You know, Joohwan just changing up his leads, Steven also changing up his leads as well. So both players making some adjustments here in this game 2. You know, Tapu Koko does take a lot of damage from that Moonblast, as we saw in the previous game, because it's not that bulky Assault Vest variant. It actually took a lot more than I thought a normal one would even take. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of damage dealt here. Now, Steven now withdraws Kyogre as the Heavy Rain lifts itself off the field, and Incineroar takes the field here. So Incineroar, a very good switch in to deal with this Duskmane and Necrozma, as the Intimidate not going to matter too much against both of these Pokemon over on Joohwan's side.
Yeah, solid switch in there. You are able to take Psychic type attacks, obviously, and it should be able to eat up a Moonblast relatively well. So Joohwan actually opted not to switch, was trying to bait out some attacks, go for the Protect, scout out for what Steven wanted to do, and Lele is going to go into the Moonblast, but into the Protect, so ends up being a pretty favorable turn for Steven, I would say. Now you know that the Tapu Lele has committed to Moonblast, you know that that can't knock you out. Also, you know Necrozma is protected last turn, and Incineroar has a turn to Fake Out. That being said, because the Tapu Koko is running the Fairy Z and not the Electric Z, he isn't able to, you know, one-shot something here. Of course, you'd imagine that Steven's going to want to prioritize knocking out Tapu Lele, but this is a free opportunity for Joohwan to potentially just switch Tapu Lele out into Groudon. That is something that he can do. However, at what cost? Of course, if he does that and Necrozma just decides to stay in and not Ultra Burst, then it could take a Flare Blitz from Incineroar. So, you know, Steven does have the opportunity to click Fake Out right now, but I think he should actually probably go for an attack. Even a U-turn maybe to pivot out. I think Fake Outing is just, doesn't really get you enough right now, and I think Tapu Lele might be inclined to switch out into Groudon, but it's staying in.
Yes, it is actually going to Ultra Burst here and bring out Ultra Necrozma here. So, here we go. Going to lose that Steel typing. Can possibly just eat a Twinkle Tackle though, so not even protecting here as Tapu Lele now using Moonblast here, targeting down that Incineroar slot, doing about 30% damage as Tapu Koko actually just using Volt Switch, and not very effective damage dealt to that Ultra Necrozma. But now Necrozma does get to move and deal some damage out over onto Steven's side of the board as Steven gets to pivot here.
Yeah, you got to wonder where Necrozma's attack is going into. I like the Volt Switch there. I also really like the decision to Ultra Burst. They're obviously a little bit risky. Kyogre is coming in, though, and of course it is going to be slower than both the Tapu Lele and the Necrozma. So first we got to see where Necrozma chooses its target this turn. Could be an Earth Power into Incineroar or a Photon Geyser into Kyogre. So.
Yeah, and here we go. Necrozma now using Earth Power, targeting down that Incineroar slot here. Big damage. Oh! Incineroar just hangs on with a sliver of hit points. Just probably 1 or 2 hit points that it just hung on with an Earth Power as it heals back with that Figgy Berry here as Incineroar now uses Flare Blitz and it fizzles out in the rain. Oh no, Steven forgot about that.
Yeah, that is definitely unfortunate. Of course, Kyogre's Rain will cancel out Flare Blitz, so bringing it in means that Flare Blitz no longer will go off. Big survival there, but once again, the threat is still Tapu Lele. It is out on the field. It has not taken any damage. Incineroar now cannot go for Flare Blitz. And, yeah, I mean, just an unfortunate series of events there for sure. Now, Necrozma, of course, has threaded the Z-move as well, a Moonblast, and I think the Z-move most certainly should knock out the Kyogre. Kyogre, of course, has the option to protect right now, so Joohwan could, of course, just double up into Incineroar like we did see him do the last turn.
Yeah, Kyogre now protecting itself here as Tapu Lele just content with using Moonblast here, hitting into that Incineroar slot again, probably doing about 30 to 40% damage right there. As Necrozma now using Dragon Pulse, it is going to double up into that Incineroar and get the KO, so allowing Steven now one free switch to see what he has that can combat with this Necrozma and this Tapu Lele.
Yeah, I mean, you'd imagine you have to bring out the Tapu Koko because it at least outspeeds Necrozma. Like, Necrozma's speed is really playing huge dividends right now. Paying huge dividends, excuse me. But this Tapu Lele is still just putting in so much pressure. Yeah, so Tapu Koko comes out. And now at least it pressures the Necrozma with the potential Twinkle Tackle, but Tapu Lele, of course, does have access to Moonblast. I mean, one play you can make here for Joohwan is just to switch the Necrozma out into Groudon, go for a Moonblast into Tapu Koko. You know the Tapu Lele can survive a... Tapu Lele can survive the Z-move from Tapu Koko, and Kyogre won't be able to do anything other than Ice Beam Tapu Lele once Groudon's out on the field. So that's definitely a potential play. I think he most definitely wants to conserve the Necrozma. If you don't let it basically fall down to an attack from the Tapu Koko, it will be able to potentially clean up the game against both Kyogre and Rayquaza. So I would be surprised to not see a Groudon switching this turn on Joohwan's end, just because it does seem like a pretty good opportunity to get it in. You don't want to just eat up a Z-move from the Tapu Koko for free on either of these. But
and
wow,
no switches at all, just using Moonblast here. Going to target down that Kyogre, get some chip damage dealt out onto it with a special attack drop as well. Now it looks like Twinkle Tackle from Tapu Koko is going to hit. It is going to be able to get the KO on Ultra Necrozma if it hits. Will be able to do big damage on Tapu Lele if it targets down instead as well.
Yeah, I'm really surprised to not see a switch there. I felt like the more consistent option, but let's see first of all where this Twinkle Tackle goes into. Is it the Necrozma? Yes.
Yes, it is the Necrozma, and that is going to be a big, big KO.
Yeah, the special attack drop onto the Tapu Lele, actually onto the Kyogre could have been a big deal. We are going to see a single target water type attack now onto the Tapu Lele. Oh, and
Not
it's
even,
the
it's
Ice
just
Beam.
an Ice Beam. Expecting that Groudon to switch in.
Yeah, so Joohwan getting the better end of it, and that's exactly why he didn't switch out into Groudon. But that is a big turn for him there. Now, no Groudon once again, but yeah, like, that makes sense because if you just switch in Groudon now, the Tapu Koko can just pivot out into the Kyogre and you can just go for a water type attack. Lilligant actually a pretty decent option right now because it will be faster than the Kyogre, so you can go for a grass type attack into that slot. Tapu Koko has already committed its Z move, and Tapu Lele can continue kicking Moonblast against Tapu Koko. I'm not even sure a Thunderbolt will knock out the Tapu Lele in this range, so I mean, yeah, you could just go for like Moonblast and Leaf Storm into Kyogre, or if Lilligant's carrying the Z move, you could even Z move into the Kyogre here. On Steven's end, I mean, it's just tricky, right? Because everything there's nothing resists Moonblast, and this Scarf Lele once again has really been the threat. It has stuck around for way too long.
Yeah, so well, Groudon's still in the back, most likely with this Lilligant Groudon core that Joohwan enjoys piloting here as it protects itself. Tapu Lele using Moonblast here, gonna go ahead and hit into that Tapu Koko. Gonna do big damage right there, bring it down to under 25% as Tapu Koko using Thunderbolt boost by that electric train. That is not even enough as Kyogre now uses Ice Beam to target down in that Lilligant slot. So right now, Tapu Lele still hanging out onto the field despite not being its bulkier version, just a Choice Scarf version, just being out on the field for so long, being able to do so much work for Joohwan's team, being able to go for Moonblasts. So many Moonblasts that it's been able to throw out in this whole match.
Yeah, and another one, of course, will knock out the Tapu Koko. Groudon presumably in the back right now for Joohwan. And so, I mean, it really comes down to how the Lilligant and Kyogre are trained. Right now, I was assuming that the Lilligant should outspeed the Kyogre, but if the Kyogre actually does outspeed the Lilligant, then this game definitely gets a little bit more interesting. But Kyogre not protecting last turn, so going for the opportunity to protect this turn. I think Joohwan was trying to bait it out last turn, but didn't get it out.
Yeah, and Tapu Lele now using Moonblast, going to hit into that Tapu Koko, going to go ahead and get the KO and force Steven to reveal his last Pokemon hiding still in the back, most likely that Rayquaza here, as Lilligant going to go for a Z move here, going to be a Bloom Doom, trying to target down that Kyogre for some big damage, but just going to be some chip damage here as Kyogre protected itself.
Yeah, I think with Lilligant, you're almost always going to be running like the fastest variant possible, so you can make that play with relative confidence, knowing that you'll be faster than the Kyogre. If Joohwan, for some reason, was running a really slow Lilligant, then it'd be a little bit scary because then you have to worry about Kyogre being faster, but yeah, not much reason to run a non-speedy Lilligant, so being able to go for the safe play there. Of course, the Kyogre Protect means it will hang on for a little bit longer, so Steven is definitely not out of it yet, but it is a pretty tricky spot to be in. I mean, here's the thing, right? This Rayquaza does have extreme speed, and we know that Lilligant doesn't have a Focus Sash, so it will just faint to a Dragon Ascent. I'm not sure a Tapu Lele Moonblast will actually knock out the Kyogre. One other really important decision is Steven probably doesn't want to Mega Evolve immediately because he wants to conserve the airlock, and so yeah, okay, this is going to be big.
Just uses extreme speed here, gets the KO on that Tapu Lele, so now this Lilligant is going to be able to move. Going to go for a
hit. Oh,
misses! Kyogre dodges it, and Kyogre uses Ice Beam. Gonna hit into that Lilligant slot, big damage, and not a one-hit KO, but with a freeze as well, just insult to injury. But if that Leaf Storm had connected, that would have been pretty solid game state for Joohwan. But of course, Groudon doesn't really have much that it can do in order to hit that Rayquaza, though.
Yeah, I mean, that was the safest play possible on both players' ends, right? I think Steven has to go for the extreme speed, and oh man, that is definitely an unfortunate miss. Had that connected, you don't get the damage onto Lilligant, and then it's a 2v1 with Rayquaza and against Lilligant and Groudon. Definitely not like unwinnable for Steven's end, but you have to target down the right Pokemon at the right time. Now, I think Steven should have this game won because you can just simply Mega Evolve, get the knockout onto Lilligant. If Groudon is faster than Kyogre, then maybe you can knock it out, but there's just not enough damage right now on Joohwan's end to knock out the Rayquaza, so obviously a very, very big miss there onto the Kyogre, but I think there wasn't really any other play you could really go for there.
Yeah, so right now, Pretty easy path forward for Steven. Just go for a Mega Evolve the Rayquaza, get that Delta Stream going so that Kyogre can hit Groudon with water type attacks. Go for an extreme speed onto the Lilligant. You don't even have to, but just go for it anyways.
It's better because you don't want to Dragon Ascent to decrease your special defense. So yeah, a pretty clear-cut play here.
And the Focus Sash is still intact on the Rayquaza anyways.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah. Here we go. Rayquaza Mega Evolves now. Gonna go ahead and bring out that Delta Stream. Now looks like everything's just going to go exactly how it's been mapped in Steven's mind. The extreme speed in that Lilligant slot. Now Kyogre going to be able to go. Yes, it actually is going to outspeed onto that Groudon. So possibly a speed tie, possibly not. But Kyogre won that exchange there. Gets that huge single target Origin Pulse on that Groudon, gets the KO. So Steven Morioka forcing game 3 here.
Yeah, I mean, he made a really good move to protect the Kyogre on that second turn and not the first turn. So we saw Joohwan bait out the potential protect from Kyogre. Didn't go for the Z move immediately, instead opted to wait a turn, and that allowed Steven to eat the damage up with the Z move, making Leaf Storm less accurate. Obviously, Joohwan wins that game most of the time, but I think good on Steven to assess what his win conditions were. I think he does have to be a little bit more careful, you know, not flare blitzing with the Kyogre out on the field. And I think he really, really needs to prioritize knocking out this Tapu Lele. I mean, you could even justify bringing in Bronzong potentially in this set. The downside is, of course, it's not grounded, so Lilligant can Sleep Powder it, and of course, it's threatened by Groudon a lot. But yeah, I mean, if Steven wants to make an adjustment, like Gengar and Bronzong are both certainly Pokemon you can bring into this matchup, like as Joohwan locks in instantly. So I think, like, this is certainly winnable for Steven. That first game, I really was surprised that he didn't prioritize knocking out Tapu Lele as much. And like, I feel like, you know, here, the goal really is, if you knock out Tapu Lele, that really paves the way for Rayquaza and Kyogre to really sweep the game.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about those Choice Scarf Moonblast. You don't have to worry about Psychic Terrain anymore, possibly coming in to prevent Rayquaza from being able to go for extreme speed. So knocking out that Tapu Lele is going to be pretty key for Steven here. You know, he got away with it in game 2, but it's going to make his path forward a lot easier. You're definitely right about that, Aaron. So
yeah, I think like Gengar is probably not the easiest Pokemon to bring in here because you know it is Choice Scarf Tapu Lele. So Bronzong is certainly something you can consider. I understand why Steven's been bringing this Tapu Koko and Incineroar, though Incineroar is just always good, and it's a good switch in into a lot of these moves. And Tapu Koko sets up the terrain, so you can't just spam Sleep Powder with the Lilligant. So I feel like Steven could even go with the same 4 Pokemon. They've worked out fine. I think he just needs to knock out Tapu Lele faster than he has currently. And for Joohwan's end, I mean, he played that pretty well, honestly. He put himself in a position where he was going to win most of the time, just an unfortunate miss. So
here we go now, jumping into game 3 here between Joohwan Kim and Steven Morioka after Steven barely squeezes by and forces game 3. So now, coming in to the leads, still haven't seen that Zoroark. I'm definitely terrified if we do see that Zoroark because I won't know which one it is. Groudon and Lilligant leads for Joohwan here. His tried and true Sun Chlorophyll combo as Tapu Koko and Kyogre are the leads for Steven right there. So that no airlock ability, but now we're going to see how this Primal Reversion is going to determine the weather. It looks like Kyogre is going to revert first, so that means that, you know, in that last turn of game 2, we saw that the Kyogre moved before the Groudon, and we saw it now Primal Revert first, so possibly indicating that it is not a speed tie and that Kyogre is outright faster.
Yeah, I think Joohwan getting the better end of this because he will get his weather up, so Kyogre isn't able to go for water type attacks, obviously, against Groudon unless the Tapu Koko switches out into Rayquaza, but also Lilligant just pressures with the Z move immediately off against the Kyogre. I really want to know what the damage calculation is for Tapu Koko's Z move against Lilligant. That's not something, I honestly have no idea what that is, but
probably a KO.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? So if it is, then Lilligant can't just freely attack the Kyogre, and that makes this a little bit scarier, but Lilligant could obviously protect here, and Groudon could just go for something like an Earth Power to Tapu Koko, but if the Tapu Koko chooses to just switch out into Rayquaza and Kyogre just goes deep and goes for an Origin Pulse, the Groudon will faint. So this is a fun lead because there are a lot of mind games right from the start. You want to protect all of these Pokemon because they're all in potential KO from something. And you also want to bait out the Z moves, right? If you bait out the Fairy Z, and the Tapu Koko switching out.
Switches out here. Rayquaza is going to take the field, but what is Lilligant going to do here? Is it going to just outright go for that Bloom Doom here? as Airlock takes effect. Kyogre actually using this turn to protect, so Steven not using this Rayquaza switch as an offensive move here, really just setting it up. Lilligant uses After You, but it's going to go ahead and fail as Groudon uses Eruption because it was going to move next anyways.
Oh, that's a great play from both players, and I love the After You play because, you know, Tapu Koko there is going to want to probably use the Fairy Z move a lot of the times, and Steven actually really predicts that. Brings in Rayquaza, which is an excellent switch in now, and now the Rayquaza, of course, can one-shot the Lilligant with a Dragon Ascent, and Groudon is in one-shot KO range from the Kyogre. So a really great play, of course. Lilligant does get access to Sleep Powder, and it can Sleep Powder Rayquaza because Rayquaza is not grounded. So this could be an opportunity to do so, but Groudon's still in an awkward spot because it does not want to eat up a Water-type attack. Yeah,
and of course Rayquaza can just Mega Evolve and outspeed that Lilligant and get the KO as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So tough spot right now for Joohwan. He's going to have to do a little bit of switching if he wants to be in better position because right now, with the way the board position is, it could possibly be 2 KOs on Joohwan's side as Groudon now forced to switch out. Necrozma is going to take the field here. It is going to allow Joohwan to have that Sun for later on as Lilligant here uses Protect, not wanting to get KO'd as well. So Joohwan really just trying to play the board game right now. Not even Mega Evolving from that Rayquaza. Just going to go straight into the Dragon Ascent into that Protect as Kyogre now using Water Spout. It is going to hit into that Duskmane Necrozma, and that's going to do some good damage right there, almost getting the KO.
Yeah, so that was such an interesting turn, right? Because if Rayquaza Mega Evolves, then you actually give up the Delta Stream, meaning Groudon can switch back in. So you're basically trading your ability for a guaranteed knock onto Lilligant, right? Because Lilligant actually is faster than Rayquaza if they're both max speed before the Mega Evolution. So Joohwan had the opportunity to go for a Sleep Powder there, doesn't. And now Steven, I think, can just go freely for, I mean, you could Mega Evolve, and I think it's probably better to just to guarantee to knock out to Lilligant because Lilligant's too much of a threat otherwise. So you can Mega Evolve and just attack on both ends. And even though it might mean Groudon coming in, we know the Kyogre is faster, so the Kyogre can pivot out and back in. But a nice decision last turn not to, and Lilligant's actually going to be the one switching out this time.
Lilligant now switching out as Tapu Lele takes the field here. It is the Choice Scarf variant of Tapu Lele that we saw do so much work in games 1 and 2. Going to go ahead and activate the Psychic Terrain here, making the battlefield just a little bit weirder as Kyogre now switches out as Incineroar takes the field. The Intimidate is not going to matter at all versus this Tapu Lele and that Duskmane Necrozma.
Yeah, so wanting to conserve the Kyogre to make sure you have an endgame against the Groudon, which is definitely a nice play there on Steven's end. Rayquaza obviously putting on so much offensive pressure right now against both of these Pokemon. It won't be able to knock out either, but the Tapu Lele switching means, of course, that a Necrozma will be able to get a very, very strong Photon Geyser off potentially, which will just knock out the Rayquaza. So we'll see if Joohwan kind of walks into the Incineroar switching or whether he does correctly target down the Rayquaza. This is going to be a big turn.
Yep, and Necrozma now Ultra Bursting into Ultra Necrozma. Now, here we go. Rayquaza now using Extreme Speed, but it is blocked by that Psychic Terrain as looks like Dragon Pulse from Necrozma is going to be used here to get the KO on that Rayquaza, whose Focus Sash was broken just a couple turns prior from that Eruption. So Rayquaza getting knocked out really hurts Steven's opportunities and possibilities to try to maintain, you know, advantages in terms of the weather here as, wow, that is a big knockout right there.
Yeah, excellent play there by Joohwan to get rid of that Rayquaza. And once again, the Tapu Lele is out, and it hasn't taken any damage, and it can click Moonblast, and it's putting on so much pressure. Of course, now Tapu Koko does have the threat of the Z move, which can knock out the Necrozma even if it protects. Incineroar here does have access to Fake Out, but the thing is, Moonblast will do so much damage to Tapu Koko, it will get a 2-hit KO. Incineroar, you still have to deal with the Groudon as well, right? If Steven loses another Pokemon, and he will most likely lose the Weather War as well, and that is not something you want to happen, especially because there is a Lilligant waiting in the back too, waiting for it to use a potential Z move against the Kyogre. So that was an excellent play by Joohwan last turn. Knocking out Rayquaza in this set is such a big deal because obviously it's one of the strongest Pokemon, but it also means that Kyogre just has so much less room to work with.
Yeah, so big KO right there as Incineroar now using Fake Out. Going to go ahead and Fake Out that Tapu Lele, making sure that it cannot move. As Twinkle Tackle from the Tapu Koko now is going to be activated. It is going to either get the KO on Ultra Necrozma, although that seems kind of like a waste of your Z move to just go ahead and target down that Ultra Necrozma. So possibly trying to target down this Tapu Lele here to try to get the KO outright. Nope, just instead of going to go ahead again, target down that Ultra Necrozma.
Yeah, maybe hoping to, just guarantee a knockout through Protect, but now the issue is that Joohwan will be able to pivot in Groudon for relatively free, and neither Tapu Koko nor Incineroar can really do very much against it, unless there's a Hidden Power Water on Tapu Koko. That would be the way out for Steven, but of course, I think we've seen most of its attacks at this point, so it's rather unlikely that it is carrying Hidden Power Water, and Joohwan has managed himself, he's put himself into a really, really good position now, because Incineroar, of course, wants to go for something like a Flare Blitz into the Tapu Lele. Tapu Koko, as we saw, it really doesn't do very much damage in terms of Thunderbolt against Tapu Lele. So, I mean, Incineroars really don't often carry Protect, so I think Joohwan has a relatively safe play of doubling up into the Incineroar, and then you can swap Groudon out and back in. But that's not the play that he necessarily has to go for. Maybe he doesn't want to give a free switch and into the Kyogre, but Incineroar here is basically going to want to pivot out. He actually kind of baits the Kyogre out, so actually switching out the Groudon.
Groudon switches out. Lilligant takes the field here. Could possibly be hit with a Flare Blitz from the Incineroar over on Steven's side, as Moonblast from that Tapu Lele hits Tapu Koko for big damage yet again, as Tapu Koko using Thunderbolt now, boosted by that Electric Terrain. Tapu Lele hangs on, as Incineroar now going to go ahead and double down into that Tapu Lele and get the KO with that Flare Blitz on Incineroar. So now it's going to come down to Lilligant and Groudon over on Joohwan's side versus Steven's Incineroar and Tapu Koko. Of course, that Kyogre in the back can rain on Joohwan's parade.
Yeah, I mean, Joohwan switching out there means that he will actually end up losing this Weather War, and we know that the Kyogre is faster as well, so this is going to be a close game. I mean, Flare Blitz, of course, will just knock out Lilligant, and maybe here Lilligant wants to just protect itself as Groudon goes for something like an Earth Power into Incineroar. Yeah, you basically need to get 2 attacks off against Incineroar, because I don't think a single Earth Power will knock out the Incineroar. Tapu Koko is in a pretty precarious position, though. You don't really want to switch out, because then you're in risk of getting, Leaf Storm, but there's no other attack to really go for other than Dazzling Gleam, or you could, I guess, Volt Switch the Lilligant. But I think Joohwan just needs to be careful and not give up Lilligant for free to a Flare Blitz. Once Kyogre comes out on the field, Incineroar also can't knock out the Lilligant with a Flare Blitz. So, yeah, you basically just want to make sure that Lilligant doesn't faint in this next turn, and make sure that Kyogre is out so that it is protected.
Yeah, and of course you're going to have to watch out for that Bloom Doom, but here we go. Instead, it looks like Joohwan just going to go straight for a Bloom Doom instead this turn. Maybe doubling up into the Incineroar, and then maybe following up with Earth Power to get the KO on that Incineroar, or maybe expecting that Kyogre to switch in at some point here if this does go into that Tapu Koko slot.
Yeah, you'd imagine it's going to double up into Incineroar,
yep,
and
there
that's
it
exactly what you said. So the question is it enough? Let's see.
Yep, so here comes the Bloom Doom onto the Incineroar. Does not do that much damage, and this Earth Power is going to be very close here, as Tapu Koko just using Dazzling Gleam, going to chip away at Groudon, does decent damage to the Lilligant, and here comes the Earth Power.
Is it enough? It comes down to this.
And it hits the Incineroar. How much damage is it going to do?
Oh,
it does get the KO. So it does get the KO, but of course, that Lilligant has used up one of its best offensive options, that Bloom Doom, just to get some chip damage out on that Incineroar. Now, is Kyogre going to be able to hang on to a Leaf Storm, which, Kyogre is pretty specially bulky.
Yeah, this game got really, really close. I mean, Joohwan going for a pretty safe and consistent play there, but like you mentioned, you do give up the potential to use the Z move on the Kyogre. However, that was a relatively safe play, because it, will almost, that's the only way you really have to pressure to knock out the Incineroar other than protecting the Lilligant. I thought that would have been really close, but Earth Power doing enough ultimately there in the end. But now, Kyogre is faster than the Groudon, so maybe you just click Dazzling Gleam, and we haven't seen all the water type attacks from Steven's end, but if you have Origin Pulse, yeah, maybe Dazzling Gleam and Origin Pulse, and then Lilligant maybe has to hope to hit the Leaf Storm, but I think Joohwan's actually in a pretty awkward spot right now. He's going to protect
Lilligant actually
Lilligant.
protecting here, not going to want to take any damage at all just yet, as it looks like Tapu Koko now using Dazzling Gleam, maybe hoping for an Origin Pulse miss here, as Tapu Koko does connect on that Groudon with that Dazzling Gleam. Origin Pulse lands, does it connect on Groudon here. Going to be important. It does hit on that Groudon, gets the big KO right there. And wow.
That should just be game.
Lilligant has really one option here to go on the offensive here with a Leaf Storm. Can't hit both, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, yeah, Steven ended up not switching up his Pokemon, but it ended up working out quite well. I mean, this was a really interesting game, ultimately. I think turn 1 was such a big play on Steven's end, though. That was so smart to... And let's see how much Leaf Storm does. I don't think it would knock out Kyogre, but let's see.
Leaf Storm from Lilligant hits the Kyogre, doesn't even get the one-hit KO, drops its special attack by 2 stages here. As Kyogre uses Ice Beam, Steven Morioka takes Game 3 here of Swiss Round 6 of the North American International Championships. Well played by both players here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was surprised to see Joohwan not go for, like, the turn that he committed to Zebu, and I thought maybe he could have protected with the Lilligant and gone for an Earth Power into the Incineroar slot, but I guess then the Incineroar, if it U-turns into the Groudon, will just be able to come in, like Kyogre will be able to come in. That being said, even if Kyogre's out, you do pressure with the Z-move, so I'm not sure it was best for Joohwan to just commit the Z-move that turn, because then you give up your main means of offense, and so once he commits the Z-move, Kyogre isn't in threat of getting one-shot by the Lilligant, but that was a really intense series. I mean, geez, definitely, I think one of the closest sets that we've seen today.
Yeah, it was really intense. I mean, it was really back and forth. A lot of board position was being moved back and forth between both those players, especially in this case where you had, Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza just really trying to win that weather war that we always talk about in terms of these big basic formats or these legendary formats, right?
Yeah, and you can see where Kyogre plays the advantage, right? Even though Steven didn't even switch it out, like Joohwan felt inclined to switch out Groudon towards the end of that game before the Kyogre even came in, thinking, oh, this is how I'm going to be able to win the weather war, but sometimes you give up a lot of offense in doing so. That was a really, really crazy set, honestly. And the ending of that was very close. Like, I felt like there wasn't a definitive winner, but after the Z move came out, then it felt like because we knew Kyogre was faster and because we know it's special Groudon, unless a Leaf Storm is getting a critical hit on the Kyogre, then it should be game. I mean, what I guess Joohwan was hoping for was obviously an Origin Pulse miss on the Groudon, and the odds of an Origin Pulse miss are slightly higher than, of course, getting a critical hit. So you hope for the miss on, you get an Earth Power against Kyogre, and then you can Leaf Storm to win the game. But
yeah, so it's a tough position that Joohwan was in, but games 1 were well played by both players. Joohwan barely edging out Steven Morioka in that first game. Game 2 came down to the wire. There was a moment where Steven Morioka had actually forgotten about the heavy rain mechanic, where no fire moves can be used. Use Flare Blitz after switching in his own Kyogre, so we saw that move fizzle out real fast, and coming all the way down to game 3, so intense. I mean, came down to the wire. Like you said, we had no idea who was going to win that all the way up until the end once that Bloom Doom finally was revealed.
Yeah, I'm still thinking whether it was more optimal to maybe protect Lilligant and go for an Earth Power into Incineroar towards the end of that game, just because you need to conserve the Z move to knock out the Kyogre, but obviously it's so hard to make these decisions, especially in 45 seconds, so, and especially after playing such a long set too, so, really, really great set there. Joohwan obviously getting a little bit unfortunate in that second game, missing the Leaf Storm, which it would have won him the game, honestly, I think. And the ending of that second game was really wild, too. I mean, seeing the double up and then seeing the Dragon Ascent targeted to Groudon, like, really just some next level plays there.
Yeah, and wow. I mean, it was just so much shifting, so much switching, just trying to get that right board position. Joohwan obviously wanted to get that Kyogre in the sun instead of in that heavy rain, so well played by both players again. That was just intense to watch.
Yeah, I really need to, I want to compliment both players because I thought they were making some good plays, and turn 1 for Steven was great. Like, he assessed that After You was a potential threat. Had After You Eruption just gone off and Tapu Koko fainted, I think the game would have been so difficult to win there for Steven, because Tapu Koko, of course, is able to outspeed the Ultra Necrozma, also able to put on pressure against Lilligant, and ultimately was able to spread this Dazzling Gleam damage. That was pretty important as well. So good conservation of the Tapu Koko, really great switching into the Rayquaza, and yeah, even though Joohwan took a early lead by knocking out Rayquaza, still able to pull it off. So really, really an exhilarating set.
And of course, that third game, Steven finally decided to double down and knock out that Tapu Lele as soon as possible, really doubling up into it as well. Of course, there's only one player that knows best about his game plan, so let's go ahead and take it away with an interview with Anna. Take it away, Anna.
Thanks, guys. I am here with Steven. As you came back here, you said, I really just scraped that one out. Why do you feel that way?
Well, I made a bunch of mistakes in there, got some good fortune rolling my way, so, and Joohwan's a very good player, so I was very lucky to get that one out. It was a tough match for both of us.
Now, I think that it seemed like the Tapu Lele was something you had to adjust to, that you had to make some changes over the course of the games. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's terrain, really interferes with my Incineroar's Fake Out and Rayquaza's Extreme Speed, just the priority moves in general. So it's really a big struggle to, maneuver around it. You know, got to be able to set up my train with Coco, just be able to take the knockout with it, you know, when appropriate, and, you know, just want to make sure not to give Joohwan any free switch-ins either.
Absolutely. So you feel good about this match, and what are you going to do next moving forward?
Well, I'm happy I won. I wasn't extremely pleased with the way I was playing. You know, a lot of improvements there because I made mistakes which were noticeable in there. I'm also very rusty. This is my first tournament, or first tournament, second tournament back for like the past 2 years. I took like a 2-year break. So I'm very rusty, but glad to be playing again. It's very fun.
And where are your standings right now? What are you hoping to achieve here at Nationals?